Alright, welcome to today's video. For this video, we're going to focus on what ionic bonding is. The learning targets that we're going to talk about for this video are going to be what are ions, the difference between a cation and an anion, and then we'll start talking about how ionic bonds form. Let's go ahead and get started. An ion is just an element that has gained or lost an electron. To show you a quick example, sodium has one valence electron that it could use to form bonds with other elements. In the process of forming an ionic bond, sodium loses that electron. On the other side of the periodic table, we have chlorine. Chlorine has 7 valence electrons. It's going to want to try and add one more to it just to have a full complete set there. When it does gain that one electron, it becomes an ion as well. And this is just the general description of an ion in both forms. Let's take a look at the difference between a cation and an anion. A cation is just a positive ion. This is typically metals. There are some instances where some nonmetals become cations, but an element or an ion becomes a cation because it loses electrons. It is more positive because of the lack of electrons which have a negative charge. So in this case, sodium only has that one. When it loses it, it becomes a positive sodium ion or sodium cation. Calcium has only 2 electrons. It's more likely to lose them than gain more. Calcium, when it loses those electrons, becomes more positive in charge, making it a cation. On the other side, chlorine has 7 electrons in its outer shell. It's more likely to grab one than to lose one of its electrons. When it does grab one, it becomes more negative, making it an anion. Oxygen is the same thing. It's got 6 electrons in its outer shell. It's going to be more likely to grab 2 electrons than lose all 6 of the electrons it has. And when it does, it becomes more negative in charge, making it an anion. Now let's take a look and see how bonding works. An ionic bond is just a bond between 2 elements, typically metals and nonmetals, where one element takes one or more electrons from the other. If we look at an example here, throughout the periodic table, the most commonly thing a metal becomes is a cation when it does become an ion. Metals typically lose their electrons. Nonmetals typically gain electrons. They become more negative when they become an anion. And this is usually the case throughout every sort of example that we could look at. So if we look at a metal such as sodium forming a bond with a non-metal such as chlorine, sodium is going to want to give up that one electron that it has to chlorine. And when it does, it becomes more positive. Sodium does. Chlorine becomes more negative. And they behave somewhat similar to how magnets behave, in that the positive end of sodium will be attracted to the negative chlorine and form a bond through that attraction. Calcium, another metal with 2 electrons, and oxygen, another non-metal but with only 6 electrons. They will form a bond with each other in the same way. Calcium will want to, as a metal, will want to give up these electrons, and oxygen as a non-metal will want to take these 2 to get its maximum of 8. And when it does, calcium becomes a much more positive cation compared to oxygen, which becomes a much more negative anion. And then again, like magnets, they will want to stick to each other and form a bond in that way. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you do, please like and subscribe, and I will see y'all in the next one. Take care, y'all.